Hello everybody, sorry I've been away from my own YouTube channel for so long. It makes you think I don't care, but I do. And here I am. This episode is just to catch you back up, and hopefully we'll make some more regular features after I've retired. Hello everybody, here we are. We're going to have a look at our chart, which maps the progress of our first year of Rhubarb Shed. Interestingly, I've decided to look at these projects in terms of temperatures. So 3 projects. George, he's number 1. Jeff, he's number 2, he's got to get us there. And me, I'm number 3. I've got to be fit enough to ride the bike and drive the van and do the stuff. Often as not, there's other things to think about in life, and that's why there's a pressure trace down at the bottom of the graph, as you'll see in a moment. How do we get those figures? How do we do it? Dead simple. I just have 3 parameters and I mark each of them out of 33. That'll get me to 99 degrees C. I never ever want to overboil any of these projects. That's like put too much effort in. Please forgive my voice, by the way. I'll explain this later on. How we do it is we have a little feel for how ready we are in the week that we're in. Yeah, feel ready. We've got a few things done. Therefore, I'll mark it high out of 33. Condition. Okay, I look at George and sometimes I think, as I imagine him right now, the stage he needs to be at for the project to go forwards, i.e. looking like a bike from 1937 that starts, that runs, I could do with some more reliable lights on him. Those sorts of considerations give me a chance to mark his condition out of 33. And then I've got enthusiasm, which is my enthusiasm. Where am I? How do I feel about the project? Do I feel overwhelmed? Do I feel like I'm thinking about what we can do next? So when you add those 3 scores up, you're sort of getting towards measuring a temperature, and the temperature is aiming to be between 90 and 95. I think that's the perfect temperature for a project to be at. So I've done it with George, I've done it with Jeff, and I've done it with myself. Of course, when I'm talking about condition, I'm talking about the things that are making me struggle with my health. Of course, when we get down to the bottom of this chart, data, we've got this little line here, pressure, and that is essentially just showing us what else life is bringing to the table, what problems we have. As you can see, these comments here are to do with what was happening in those weeks. This one says, decided to film Rhubarb Shed with Matty. Great. And then over the next couple of weeks, I did a lot of stuff that I didn't label. I didn't know how to label. The episodes came together and we started making preparations for the Isle of Man. So that is where I'll rejoin the chart. So started to film, making preparations, pressures up and down, up, down. My health was a little bit up and down there, drinking a bit too much. I'm suffering with heart difficulties, prostate difficulties, nothing serious by the way, and a few other little problematic old man sort of things. So here we are, we arrive at the Isle of Man. Just at that time, George is coming into his own. He's starting well. It's a joy to ride. The back brake is brilliant. Can't say too much about the front. So all of these things were giving me great vibes about George. And unfortunately, I didn't notice that there was some wear in the gearbox and it was letting the oil out. And by the time we got to the end of our little trip at the Isle of Man, the gearbox was struggling. And so we really did see a decline in George's condition. Similarly, after driving Jeff Campervan, I realised the skylight was leaking, the handbrake shroud and the gearbox shroud being missing, let a lot of weather in, window winders, all sorts of things that were really detrimental to our comfort. But most especially, the fuel consumption. The fuel consumption was absolutely horrendous. Jeff Campervan was a problem too. And I don't know whether you can see, but during my time in the Isle of Man, I start to decline a little bit, drinking a lot. I'm struggling with my heart problems. By the time I get home, I'm at a pretty low ebb. All the enthusiasm has gone out of the two projects. I'm back to work and the pressure starts to ramp up. George gets left alone, so he flatlines. Jeff gets left alone, he flatlines. Those two events are also marked with me getting quite unhealthy. At this point, around about here, in a bid to try and pick my health regime up a bit, I started training with Matty at his rugby club. By training, I mean I joined in a walking rugby match, and after about 40 minutes, after about 20 minutes, I was pretty well done for. At some point, I fell over. I think you remember my little short that described the event. I basically damaged my left lung. On top of the heart problems I've got, I ended up with pleurisy and I was absolutely laid flat. It was a tough time. And I recovered from that after a period of sickness. Yeah, it was hard getting back to work. And then over the course of a few weeks, I built my strength back up. Somewhere in there, around about September, about there, I decided to give up drinking. Before you go on thinking I'm, preaching, I'm not preaching at all. You do what you need to do, what you want to do. It's your life. Great, go ahead, do it. But for me, I was basically killing myself. So I curtailed the drinking finally at this point. And strangely, it had a very positive effect on me. Return to work was reasonably good, level-ish pressure. And at some point, I just felt pretty good. Everything was going great. I was starting to work on George and Jeff again. At this point, I'd fixed the skylight on Jeff Campervan, and I'd also identified what was wrong with the gearbox in George. So those things were starting to look a bit more positive. Well, we get to this point here, working a bit hard, thinking I'm out of the woods. And I start getting really severe gout. Oh my God. Pain like you wouldn't believe. Things start going downhill again. And the pressure to stay at work and to do my bit, I hit rock bottom again. And so at that point, I'm offered a cardio version, the third. And it's a final attempt to try and give me a steady heartbeat back. So that's quite encouraging for me. And we move forwards. Not a great deal of work gets done on Jeff in this period, but I'm being treated for the gout, tinkering with George, gathering some parts. Jeff just flatlines here, not even interested in him. We don't need to go anywhere in him. He's just parked on the drive. The pressure of life is easing off, but I'm getting to a position where I'm ready to start having my third cardio version. And that's a procedure where they briefly stop your heart and then start it again with an electric shock. And when it comes back to rhythm, it's in the nice doof, doof, doof instead of so for a very brief moment in time, I felt brilliant, and it lasted about a fortnight before the atrial fibrillation started kicking in again, and I went downhill. The work that I'd done on George stayed done because we fixed the gearbox. I'd done some welding. You may have noticed that episode. You may have noticed that episode. Anyway, this work stayed done, but I declined, and well, what happened to me then was I got a blood infection in my leg. I think it's called cellulitis. So that was naughty. Spent a little bit of time in hospital. Didn't let it get me down too much. Gets to a point, everything's a bit rough at work, in life. Stop working on Jeff. But I am working on myself, keeping going. And we're working towards, if you remember the original object of this whole project, was to get to Prescott and to set a time up the hill. Fun. So that's what we're aiming for here. I did a last couple of little bits and pieces to get myself feeling good. I was walking with Zeb, doing my best to get fit and healthy. Pressure increasing on me a little bit to arrive at Prescott Hill. And that's our state of readiness when we were on our way to Prescott Hill. So not quite in the zone, but nonetheless, still set 2 lovely times. I'm very proud of them. 1 minute 29, 1 minute 18. For an 86-year-old bike, that's not bad, is it? When we got back, I just let things sit on their laurels a little bit. I had a rest. Really busy time at work. And that coincided with my appointment for something called an ablation, which is where they pass an endoscope up through your groin and into your heart, pass it through from the right atrium to the left atrium, and then they use a device on the end to burn away the tissue around 4 outlets of the left atrium, and that stops the spurious electrical signals being transmitted to the muscle. Your heart can get on with beating in proper sinus rhythm. And my God, since I've had it done, fantastic. My throat's still a bit sore from having all the kit down my neck. Oh my God, it's not a comfortable procedure, but it's a very routine one. Not for me though. Thing about it is, it's really positive. I'm going to be able to lose the weight that I need to lose now. All I can say is, bring on next year. I think I'm going to be 3 stone lighter. I think George is going to be a stone or 2 lighter, maybe. I don't know. I don't know how much that tank and those mudguards weigh. I'll never do any permanent changes to George, by the way. I'll show you in a graphic a bit later on in the series what I'm trying to achieve with the look. It's all onwards and upwards. And hopefully this graph will straight line the black line. So it's just an even number of pressure lumps throughout my life instead of up and down. The work we do on George will stay done and he'll stay in the zone. And the work we do on Jeff, which is going to be much more important next year, that'll stay done and he'll get towards the zone with any luck. The work I do on myself will stay done and I will feel a lot better. So thanks for watching. Click like and subscribe if you can. It really does help. Any comments you have, I'd love to hear them. Thank you so much for being with us for a year, and onwards and upwards. Let's get racing.